Hi, my name is John Light, and I've spent over 20 years working throughout all corners of the recruiting world. Our podcast, Drowning in the Tech Talent Pool, is a resource to help you stay afloat and get ahead of your competition. Hi, and welcome to Drowning in the Tech Talent Pool. I've got with me today Jamie Lee, Chief Information Officer at Ecobat. Did I say that right, Jamie? Because I know it's like economy and battery or something put together.
Yeah, it's Ecobat for sure.
Well, thanks for taking the time out to join us. And I'm curious to get started because, you know, as we kind of enter in with people and people engage with this podcast, I think it's always important to set context. And in my world, context is, you know, it's kind of like looking at a picture in a frame, you know, in the right place so you understand it, you know. And so I was hoping you could give us a rundown of your journey, if you will, to where you are today and maybe an overview of some of the challenges you see out in the marketplace and where you think things are going to go. I think, and for what it's worth, I didn't know Ecobat when we first connected. So I don't know if there's something you might want to say about the company or throw it out there. Y'all do some interesting stuff. I think it's very relevant in today's, not just in today's economy, but in today's cultural context here in the U.S. for sure.
Well, I love talking about our company because we have a very significant role in the world and in society in terms of sustainable, what they call the circular economy of batteries and the metals and materials that go into batteries. And I heard some numbers recently. I think globally we're the largest battery recycler. So the world's full of batteries. You've got them in your cell phones, you've got them in your cars. They're in all sorts of devices, appliances, hand tools, and the like globally. So batteries are only going to proliferate. So the numbers I heard were on the lead acid battery side, we may recycle upwards of over 100 million batteries a year. And
100 million.
100 million. That's a big number, right?
Yeah.
So you think about that coming back through our facilities and going back out to our customers' hands in terms of new metal or recycled metal, recycled plastics, and the like. All of that is being kept outside of a landfill. And so when you think about the cities and the growth of the populations and where the landfills are going, you know, there's a real opportunity here to reuse what we have in the system already. By the way of metals and chemistries and batteries and so forth, rather than mining new material from the earth. So we kind of call it urban mining. So Ecobat is one of the largest, if not the largest, on the lead side, and we're probably in the top 7 or 8 when it comes to lithium. I don't know if you drive an EV, John, but some people are buying those and starting to use them. And so the electrification of things
maybe
are going to lead
people here and there.
Maybe just a couple. You know, the electrification of things is starting to lead towards lithium as a battery source, and so we're recycling those as well, and have an upcoming footprint on that globally. So Ecobat, like I say, is you don't hear about it because we're not on the shelves at Walmart necessarily, right. But we are behind the scenes moving what needs to get recycled back into new usage and for the betterment of society as a whole.
Wow, man, I tell you what, you know, we deal with tech talent, you know, we're machine learning, data analysts, data science, AI, all this sort of thing, you know, developers. But you're talking about where you sit as a CIO using technology, whether it's IT, and I kind of separate, even though there's overlap between IT and tech. You know, they used to be kind of one and the same, but it's really computing power and platforms and have given rise to taking the theory of things like machine learning and AI over the decades and turning it into something that's more of a practical reality. So I look at it a little bit differently, I think, than a lot of people do, but you're sitting up in the chair as a CIO where you're using tech, as I think of it, I'm sure, to impact what you all do with modern technology and the circular economy. I mean, there's got to be huge opportunities for applying this technology we have today to how we recycle these batteries. And not just because it's not just a moving metal kind of business, I guess is my point. There's got to be all kinds of things you could do today that maybe couldn't have been done 5 or 10 years ago.
Yeah, I definitely think there's a synergy across the word technology that's occurring today. If you think about the electric vehicle, the car itself has taken more of a premium on the battery inside that vehicle as well as the computer inside that vehicle than say the steel or the plastic that goes into the door frames or the other
Right.
parts of the car. So technology is only increased in value in that application. And so when you think about assembling those products and or disassembling those products for recycling, the technology is embedded right there. You've got the engineering that goes into the computer and to the smarts of the car and really the life of that battery, as well as the technology to disassemble and kind of melt the battery back into its core components and then put it back in the cycle again. So I think IT has kind of commandeered the word technology too much in the last few decades. Technology really is, to me, a bit of reimagination or re-engineering of tomorrow's innovation, but through what we do, these batteries, the EV, recycling, circular economy, it's all starting to blend, and it's very fascinating.
Wow, man. How hard is it to go out and find somebody who understands what you do? If you're looking to bring somebody in, to the CIO organization, for example, when you start thinking about talent, how hard is it to find people who have been there and done that? They understand what you're trying to do. They understand and buy into the mission of the company, but at the same time, they bring that specific experience that can be a value add, value impact to what you do.
Well, I always look for folks that are value or that know the value of their time, because time is really all we have, and where we spend it is of utmost importance. And I've found that some of the best hires are folks that want to be with the problem. I think I've personally served across 7 different industries in my tenure or in my career. And I found each industry to be very fascinating with certain types of problems, and applying technology as solutions to those problems was really what I enjoyed in my career. I enjoy the hand tool business. I enjoy the commercial security business. I enjoy the metallurgy business and the circular economy business that I'm in right now. I was in the chemical industry for about 9 years as well, and they all had different problems to solve. But I realized over my career that the most functional, successful time was when I was with the problem, solving the problem, deploying digital solutions, and it really didn't matter what industry it was in. That was the craft. So I look for people that share that kind of same affinity for problem solving and using digital to help businesses scale. Because the truth of the matter is digital scales and people don't. So if you want to run a professional, or say more than professional, but profitable a business, you need to leverage digital, and you need your digital to come alongside the people that you're hiring to help them be better at what they do.
Yeah, all fair points, and I think all accurate. So now you get me thinking. You've worked in 7 different industries, a couple of which I know pretty well from being a headhunter. Tell us a little bit about what that journey's looked like for you to get where you are today, right? Because I know it's not easy to go necessarily from one context to another context, but it's not always about the industry that makes it a challenge. I mean, you can learn the chemical business, you can learn the power tool business or hand tools or whatever it might be. There's a lot, there to learn, but there's a shift in context and how each company in those different industries go about their business, right? When I refer to that as cultures, how you go about your business. And so I'm curious, you've been through 7, or you're in number 7, right? You're not on number 8, but you've been around the block with that. How have you found that transition to be, and what kind of challenges or obstacles do you think a lot of people encounter shifting from culture to culture across industries?
Well, it's got to start at the center and at the heart of the person being a continuous learner. I mean, you have to look around the world and say, how can digital help in this regard? You roll through a hospital system, you realize it's imperfect. You've got imperfect people working with imperfect data on imperfect systems, leading to an imperfect process and probably a poor experience. And you got to say to yourself, this has got to be better. So we need to find people that are looking for that level of transformation to better. And we get to define what better looks like based on, the expectations of the customer and the industry. And so that does differ. And so as you jump industries, you've got to be ready and willing to flip your brain and bring that continuous learning mindset, and really I'd say curiosity, and a growth mindset to say what we've done before may not work here, and what got us here may not get us there. And so we need to be able to stretch our mindset and say, okay, let's think outside the box here. We're in a different industry. We're in a different problem set. But you know what? ERP is still a thing. Having a business on a platform with 80% of its commercial trade recognized inside of that, be able to wield that data for better analytics and profitability is key. Well, how about CRM, or how about PLM or EAM, or some of the other acronyms that I can throw out there is these platforms are enablers, regardless of the industry you're in, to serve your customers, to manage your working capital, and to drive profitability. The key is getting people that want to be with that problem, that have come together from different industries, maybe with some creativity to solve those problems, maybe in a different fashion, but having that curious kind of growth mindset and continuous learning mindset up front.
Well, they're bringing some diversity of thought to the table as well, coming from different industries. And, it's been a recurring theme, I think, in every episode we've recorded when we talk about characteristics or qualities of talent that we look for, right? That we found tend to trend into success, I guess you could say, in almost any position, almost any industry. One of the words I hear over and over and over again is curiosity. And I don't know. I mean, I've kind of wrestled with the thought, because curiosity, it's not just a product, I guess you could say, of IQ, of intellect, in the sense of, well, the higher someone's IQ is, for example, the more curious they are, because I found sometimes that's just not the case. But it's almost like this instinctive drive that kicks in and goes, wait a second, how does that work and why? And I'm curious, when you interview someone, for example, and I know what I coach candidates to do, right? When it comes to curiosity, you need to demonstrate it by asking great questions. You need to perhaps you could demonstrate it by saying, hey, I was curious. I took on a side project, and you can go out here and see a model I developed that addresses X, whatever X is. What do you look for that tells you, hey, this candidate, this person I may have bring into my organization to help Ecobat move forward, or whichever company it is, what do you look for that tells you, hey, this is somebody who has a driven curiosity to understand the why and how to do things better?
Well, managers manage, leaders lead, and contributors contribute. And there's different pay points for those types of roles, from, as demonstrated in the compensation rules of the marketplace. And what I look for in the hiring may be a contributor, it may be a leader. But what's being continually commoditized is the manager. And so the hunger is indicated, sometimes during an interview process based on the questions. Is this person coming across as insightful through their questions? Are they seeing an angle that I don't see to better the business? Or are they simply just trying to fill out the qualifications of a role to contribute? And, you can discern that in the interview itself. But what drives that curiosity, I think, is some form of leadership. Somebody that's hungry for something that is yet to be attained, or at least they're curious enough to ask questions as to what is possible to be attained. Otherwise, they're largely in a contributor role. And, those are, let's say, those compensate a little bit less than maybe the leadership or somebody that's out to drive transformation, to look for some sort of success that the company's not been able to deliver amongst itself so far.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people miss that. One of my pet peeves. I usually don't talk about my pet peeves on these podcasts.
You have a pet named Peeves?
Yeah, and let me tell you, sometimes he's just gnawing on my pant leg. When you look a lot at job descriptions that are written and put out on the web, or they're put out on Monster, Indeed, Dice, wherever it might be, they list, hey, here's a little blurb about the company. Oh, we're fantastic, rah, rah, rah. And then it'll have something like, here's responsibilities for this role. Here are the requirements, qualifications. Oh, and we're an equal opportunity employer, blah, blah, blah. And when you get resumes in, those resumes generally follow a similar format. Here's a little blurb about me. Please do not, general PSA, kill an objective statement on your resume and put a professional or executive summary, please. Call it a teammate. Tell me about yourself. Anyway, side note. But resumes tend to follow, here's my title, here's the company, and look, here are my responsibilities I fulfilled. And years ago, I would sit back and in my mind, and not trying to be offensive to anyone, but I'd kind of think, so what? You know, we know what an analyst in this particular space does, or we know what a controller over here does, or we know what, desktop support does, or we know whatever. So you're rehashing what we see out a million times over and over again on every job site and every company that's recruiting for something like this. And how does someone reading that resume really know what your capabilities are? And whenever I talk to a client and we have to work with them to develop, especially an early stage client, to develop a job description, I always like to turn it into a narrative. And you can put requirements and responsibilities, but let's put it here. What are the expectations? What do you want to accomplish in the first 6 months or 12 months? What are the major projects where you, Mr. or Miss Candidate, is going to come in here and deliver value, impact to the company, where you can kind of hang your hat, as it were, that you accomplished this? Because there's nothing compelling, there's nothing attractive about, here's my list of responsibilities. It's like a grocery list.
Yeah.
Good grief. And the only thing that happens, if you deliver everything on the grocery list, you're okay. But if you come back home and you miss 3 items, you failed. Well, I want to do more than a grocery list personally. And I think candidates want to do more than a grocery list. They want more than that. They want to be a part of something bigger. And you've touched on that, I think, several times already about being part of the Ecobat mission, what you're trying to do in the world and the circular economy, and making it less necessary for us to drill into the ground or dig into the ground and pull up lithium, for example. I think that's huge, and I'm fascinated. It would be a whole nother podcast, and we probably need to bring a Kim E in and maybe a double E to talk about how does that process work, because that's going to be an involved and challenging process on a good day. So yeah, that's just one of my, I had to go on that rant there for a second, because I really think when we get candidates, and from my perspective, a client or hiring team, to talk about, their impact,
Mm-hmm.
and people buy into that impact, and on their resume, they show what we call the STAR principle: situation, task, action, and then a quantified result, and you can bring that forward. Man, those are some of the best interviews I've ever sat in on, is when people are talking that language, when they're talking about themselves and the company and the opportunity at that level, instead of this base level, hey, here are just your responsibilities, have a nice day.
Yeah, I like that. I think you'd find their passion might come out more in that example of questions. They get to talk a little bit about their successes, part of the details inside those successes, rather than just, hey, this is what I'm responsible for, as you said.
I mean, you got responsibilities as a spouse, or as a parent, or or whatever the role might be, and you're expected to deliver on those. But to me, if you have a great attitude about it, you're genuinely curious, you're passionate about doing better, improving things, you do more than that. And people need to talk about it, I think, from both sides of the table. And I like that when we started off, I'm always cautious, when we're dealing with guests who may be in sensitive positions, or, publicly traded company responsibilities. But I thought, man, Ecobat, this is pretty cool stuff. I want to get that out on the table if we can. Don't need to know trade secrets, but man, what do y'all do? Yeah. Because so much of it isn't out there. And I come down firmly on the side. I believe that we should, in a responsible way, take advantage of the natural resources we have. At the same time, if you can reuse that natural resource time and time and time again, to where you don't have to go take advantage of it, that's something you got to investigate and explore. And if it's viable, you got to run with it, I think. And to me, that's fascinating, because a lot of companies, and I think a lot of people, don't think that way. When we have our cell phone and it goes kaput on us, what do we do?
Right, the trash.
right now, or turn it. Oh yeah, you're gonna give me a $60 credit. Thanks, AT&T or whoever it might be. I mean, goodness, if we could take that battery, and I'm sure the companies have something like this that they do, but if we could take that battery and get it to where it operates, and instead of 100% of its original life, maybe it has 80% of its original life. But that means instead of lasting for 2 years, it lasts for a year and 8 or 9 months. That means there's a year and 8 or 9 months where I don't need to go get a new battery, which requires new raw materials way at the beginning of the supply chain.
No, that's right. And that's part of the challenge with society is getting us accustomed to recycling electronics, things, and of course batteries for Ecobat, but that's not in everyone's DNA around the world right now. Some cultures have it better than others. Some cultures have bins that are in the office, and you're supposed to bring your batteries there and dump them, and they pay to have them cleaned up and taken out and so forth. But that will come around. No different than online shopping became a thing over 2 decades and became a very big thing in competition. Is there will be a recycling competition as well, and Ecobat's poised to be right there on top of batteries.
So when you all are doing batteries, and you hear lead acid, I think car batteries, heavy equipment batteries, things of that nature. And we mentioned, EV batteries, but do y'all work on smaller lithium batteries or smaller general batteries as well?
So some of our customers send us different types. I'll say there's about 20 different chemistries when it comes to lithium alone. And the battery, we talked about the word technology to start. The battery technology is evolving as we speak. As we sit here, there are new types being introduced with faster charge times and longer, mileage on where the EV battery would take the car. But our customers provide all types, and some of them we actually repair and send back to the customers because, call it an 800-pound EV battery might be something that an automotive OEM wants back to redeploy into either research and design or the cars that they're servicing.
I don't know where the battery trend is going to go, but I know there's a lot more in terms of legs to that industry if you can reuse over and over again. I mean, it's and like you said, it requires people to have a different mindset on responsibility. And I think that's critical. I'm curious, and again, not wanting to pry into anything confidential, but I am curious when you look at tech from my perspective, and you're thinking about machine learning, you're thinking about data science, you're thinking about AI. Are there applications that you all are working on that are known? Again, no trade secrets, that where this side of technology, if you will, can impact positively the circular economy as where you're involved in?
Yeah, I mean, this is of course public information, but the European Union is moving on what's called eco design. And it's a policy kind of put forward as a draft. I'm not sure it's entirely accepted just yet, but the thought is that we would extend the data model for the circular economy to include things like batteries, whereby we would trade between partners, supplier, customer, that type of thing. And that the materials on that truck, if they're spent batteries or new batteries or maybe some other type of commodity in the supply chain, you would know all the data qualities about that product. And so the balance of all of that movement across the supply chain would be innovative because you could essentially tell how much cobalt, how much manganese, lithium, if, for example, lead or whatever might be in your societal system, and wherever it may be. So by geography. So we're looking at that. That's kind of an innovative approach from government that's pushing policy potentially. And you can look it up and take a read on it. But Ecobat will be right there with our capabilities to accommodate.
So I was wondering too, there's bound to be ways that as you look at battery, maybe not so much where Ecobat sits, but upstream in battery design and development, they've got to be using machine learning and AI to figure out, hey, how can we get this to be more efficient? to make them last longer, to make it a friendlier product, I guess you could say. What do you see looking out across the market today? Now, of course, we're talent centric, but we're not limited to that and how we look at things. That's just a lens, if you will. But I'm curious, when you look out across the market today, what do you see happening over the next 3 to 5 years with tech really taking off? And like you said, battery design, if you will, is evolving constantly. Well, generative AI just hit in a big way here recently this year. How do you see the market when it starts, not just in general terms, but when we're talking about the market for talent and the people that you would need at a place like Ecobat or really any company to drive things forward? How do you see that evolving as this technology evolves over the next few years?
Well, for the last decade or so, there was a big push on data scientists. Oh, everybody's got to hire a data scientist, right? I think the market underfed that capacity. And now we've moved so fast that the AI tools are kind of in the back pockets of anybody that wants to access them. So I think the talent marketplace is going to jump from, rocket scientist data, science level of concern to, can people just leverage the tool set? Do they know how to make use of the application? And I think it's going to go in this order. I think most companies are going to leverage things like Viva Insights from Microsoft, which is kind of that co-pilot model where it comes, because companies really need the productivity of their labor base today. So everybody, let's say the majority of corporations, public and private, are largely using the Windows desktop still as a platform. They're using Office 365 globally. So you have this huge swath of people in the world that already are attached to Office 365 that have Viva Insights. And they're going to be trying to figure out, what do I do with this thing that studies me, that studies my team, that studies the organization? How can I make use of my time? How can we have better, effective meetings? How can I get analytics on the productivity of my teams to say, maybe we need to shift the organization? I call that kind of the co-pilot approach. We're not on autopilot just yet, but as people start to leverage the application of that type of tool, I think they're going to start to become more inclined to, how do we automate certain things that are kind of mundane tasks? I don't think they just jump to full autopilot and don't go through co-pilot. People are typically a little bit skeptical, and they want to study it a little bit before they accept it wholesale into the change of their organization. And we're doing that. The customers I talked to from Microsoft are doing some of the same. Microsoft's in that particular line of Viva Insights, that product, they're offering information more and more. You saw Microsoft Copilot come out. They've got product pricing on that. You can have your own kind of GPT world now. So I would say talent is getting accustomed to that, getting accustomed to the Copilot application of AI than they are, say, diving into full-on machine learning. Now, if you take a Google, for example, that's been at machine learning for years, you do have more of a data science sort of role baked into that company. Have the rest of companies been able to deploy such capabilities? I don't think so in general. But as I say, and friends of mine say, the juice has to be worth the squeeze. So if there's nothing to apply, then you're just spending in a direction that isn't going to yield any fruit. That may be okay on an R&D basis in an industry where you have a lot of margin, you have a lot of cash flow. Maybe you can spend like that on an experimental basis. But where you don't, in other industries that are more commoditized, you're not going to have that. So the best you're going to probably get to is the co-pilot piece for your people up front. But if you can get them down to the machine learning and finally get on to the autopilot side of life, then you're going to experience predictability. You're going to experience what it means to have the computer talk to you about your data without people having to interpret those data points for yourself. And it's going to lead to a whole bunch of questions. And in the questions lies opportunity, because the data brings insights, and hopefully you can gather some of those opportunities, and the people and the talent that we're hiring these days will be able to take advantage of them.
Well, we hope so, right? And that's the thing. I think the talent marketplace has to evolve and keep pace. Now, And you and I know when you climb a mountain, you never go straight up, right? You stop, you have a plateau, you hit a mesa, you hit a shoulder, you got to go around, a ravine you got to traverse or whatever. And I don't think it'll be straight line, but I absolutely agree with you on the application side. In fact, months ago, I remember having conversations telling people it's not so much that AI, generative AI, is hitting the marketplace. It's how are we going to use it? It's the application we're going to make thereof. And the fact is, I read a great article, I believe it was Harvard Business Review a while back, and it said that we're moving from a creator economy to an editor economy. And, it resonated with me from the standpoint that when I use AI, for example, to generate an outreach campaign for candidates, and it churns up the messages and, text and email and social media and, in the subject line, it populates that and so on and so forth. It probably does 70 or 80% of the work. I got to go in and I got to spot check it. I got to edit it. I got to gussy it up, to use an old word, and make it look attractive to the audience, because AI doesn't understand empathy. It doesn't understand the emotional attraction. We tend to make a decision, then look for things to buttress that decision. So we have an emotional bias toward things that buttress our decisions, and a negative bias to those things that we perceive as a threat to our decision. And that's where, one of the hardest jobs of being human is discerning between the two, being aware enough, self-aware enough to have the discipline to, even though I don't like not buttressing my decision, maybe I need to look at my premises. Maybe my decision was wrong and I need to rethink it.
Yeah.
And that's a challenge for us. Computer systems, AI as we know it, machine learning as we know it, is still good in, good out, garbage in, garbage out.
2 points.
Just have the data.
Yeah, 2 points. I agree with you that the AI has, no ability for empathy right now, which also means on the flip side, it has no ability for influence. So the human is very necessary in relationships and discerning what to do with the data that's been, I'll say, crafted for us, for them. And then, leveraging that is a whole different skill set to hire for. And you put your finger on the word bias. Good candidates will have some discernment amongst themselves to understand that their thinking is biased in a way. And we have to be open to new thinking and perspectives and shared diversity of opinion, if you will. And so I look for that in hiring as well. But that's especially important with the onset of AI. I know everybody today finishes their sentences with the word AI, and every AI can do this and that, and AI is landing in sentences that make no sense.
In my emails, at the end of every sentence, it says .ai. I mean, everything I send.
We'll just solve it with AI. Great, let's get started. And it's that hard first step that people go, now what? So you have to understand, on this topic of AI, I really see it in twofold right now. You have your large language learning model side, and then you have really the statistical probabilities and machine learning side. And the two of those together make up, in a simple story, what is ChatGPT. And you have people tweaking algorithms behind the scenes to keep it from saying racial things or get into political, nonsense or whatever, what do they call the hallucinations. That maybe that's the editor economy you referred to with Harvard Business Review is that, it's less about creativity from AI than editing models to kind of refine how the whole economy and the systems work that support that economy. I hope that's not the case. I hope that it's more than that, because I think there's a whole lot still left to create. And AI isn't the final frontier, if you will, for humanity. But we do need to use it as a tool for our betterment. And some of the talent we're seeking to do that will hopefully come into our companies and service our needs, especially at Ecobat, where our role is to be a sustainable circular economy in the world of batteries.
Man, that's such a big role, truly. And I think the talent will be there. I just don't think it'll be there in a straight line. I think that there are fears in the marketplace of being replaced or displaced by all things AI, because it's kind of the boogeyman around the corner, both good and bad. It's the superhero and the villain, if you will, in a sense. But to your point, about the editor economy, how long we're going to be there. I think you have to be there today, but I think in 3 years that could be something different. And as AI evolves and the algorithms become more nuanced, more advanced, and the data sets are structured in such a way that they're digesting them, and AI might be your PA, your personal assistant, but they could take on, by virtue of digesting your data sets, they could take on your persona, for example, when writing an email, crafting a memo, answering questions, and provide you with stuff where you have to just check off and approve it. But I think that relationship reflects something you just touched on, is that these are more tools in a toolkit. These aren't replacing humanity. These aren't replacing, the software in our brain that allows us to have things like empathy, that allows us to place an emotional value on an action or a series of actions that we may or may not take or that someone else takes. And I think that is probably the right way to view AI. It's a tool, but it's one that we're going to have to get pretty sophisticated in understanding on how to use that tool properly. It's not a hammer where we go around and everything's a nail.
You're right.
It's not even a Swiss Army knife, although I think it would be really cool if we could just pull out different blades and corkscrews and get things done. Mm-hmm. It's a very nuanced tool that requires sophistication and curiosity and a willingness to team up with it, I guess you could say, for lack of a better phrase, in order to accomplish things that we have from here rather than what maybe is spit out to us on a screen. You're making me feel philosophical here, Jamie.
It's hard not to go there with such big topics, but if you bring it back to the tools and application, it's a CIO's role in every company to ensure that the AI is, however it's deployed, is actually getting traction for its study.
Right.
If you're going to spend resources in that direction, it needs to have some level of return. And I think everybody's early on their journey with that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. Before we wrap up, I'm curious, considering where we started and asking a little bit about where you're at with Ecobat and, as CIO there, and the fact that you've crossed multiple industries, worn a lot of different hats. If someone is out there who maybe is dialing into the podcast, I haven't asked this question of anybody yet, so I'm going to ask it of you. So I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit.
Great.
But if you were looking at somebody, and maybe let's not use your age, we'll use my age. I've got more gray hanging around, I think. But if I were to go back and talk to a doppelganger or someone similar to me, but 20, 25 years ago, and I knew this is the direction they wanted to go, what are the top three things, be it skills or experiences? What are the top three things that you would go back and tell younger self, okay, you need to experience this, or you need to succeed or fail at that other thing, that would really enhance that journey and help somebody along the road to where perhaps they become a CIO or a CISO or a CTO or whatever it may be? And specific to that space, not going into other parts of the C-suite, but specific to that space.
Well, I got one funny one. Don't buy lottery tickets. They very rarely hit.
Well, if it does hit, you don't need the CIO title anymore, I guess.
That's right. If you do buy one and it does hit, good luck. If you don't, then follow these 3 steps. So I'd say number one is go out and serve people. Try and build a mindset that is people first, technology second. Because without people, businesses don't exist, and businesses exist to serve people. So you have to get the people side of it right. Technology pushed on top of people without purpose is dead tech. So, go out and be of service to people in your early career. Learn through your relationships, build that empathy, keep the curiosity, and gain an ability to be influential if you're truly trying to drive good out there. The second thing is take the machine apart. Get a computer, get a screwdriver, and undo everything. Spread it out on the table and go, what the heck does this do? Have that sort of curious growth and learning. I opportunity just to understand, because they don't teach that anymore. And part of that is part and parcel for good engineering. And data and technology and information is all information engineering. That's key. And the last piece is study the money. Where the money flows, the industry goes.
Right.
And so I really think that, having a good accounting mindset to what we do with technology leads to the promise of investments and selling those investments to C-suites, and making sure that there is, the juice is worth the squeeze. There is a return out there. This data is the fuel of tomorrow's business. And, as IT professionals, we get to curate that data. Our businesses get to enjoy it, and set the fuel on fire, if you will, so that they can go out and be more profitable in the industry. And that's, those are my 3 takeaways, I'd say. Make sure you're hitting on all those points.
No, that's terrific. Jamie, thank you very much for sharing that. And I will, I don't know if I'm going to get the production company to turn that one into a videogram or not, but that's something maybe to preamble, when we prep candidates. Hey, this is what somebody's been there, done that recommends. Are you being there, and are you doing that? Jamie Lee, Chief Information Officer, Ecobat, thank you so much for joining us today.
Recycle your batteries.
Will do. You've been listening to Drowning in the Tech Talent Pool. This podcast is sponsored by Sabretooth. Sabretooth improves the quality of hire and speeds up the time to fill specialized machine learning, data engineering, data science, and developer roles, stretching tech recruiting budgets further by bringing the precision of retained search and the speed of contingent search to the market in one complete solution. Find out more at sbr2th.com and follow me, John Light, on LinkedIn. Thanks for listening.